Hi, this is Celtic harpist Anne Roos. Myself and flutist David Blonski have a great new Christmas holiday album called A Winter's Dance. This is Celtic Christmas music.
Welcome to Celtic Christmas Music. Today I have an interview with Anne Roos. Anne is a harpist out of California, and she's been on the Irish and Celtic Music podcast forever, I think. And
Definitely.
I'm really excited to finally chat with you. How are you doing, Anne?
I'm doing fine. How about you, Mark?
I'm doing great. So how long have you been playing the harp?
I have been playing the harp for over 30 years. Exactly how many years over 30 years, I have no idea. So that's an approximation.
And how many albums have you put out in that time? Or since you probably haven't been recording the entire time, have you?
No. I actually started playing the harp completely by accident. I went to it was a winter solstice festival, and this was in Los Angeles. And there was a lady there with a booth with all these little harps in her booth, and I was fascinated. And she said, if you'd like to learn, I can rent you a harp and teach you how to play. And I said, sounds good. But if anybody all those years ago would tell me that, look into a crystal ball and say, 30 years from now, you'll be living in Lake Tahoe and making a living performing and recording harp music, I would have thought they were nuts. So you never know.
So you picked up the harp, and what did you do with it? I mean, you started practicing a lot. How did it happen there?
Yeah, I just was fascinated with the instrument and took lessons from that lady in that booth, who turns out to be, she's Sylvia Woods, and in the harp music world, she's like, I call her the Betty Crocker of Celtic harp because this woman knows everything. She has dozens, maybe hundreds, I don't know, of arrangements of music that she's produced. She has performed on movie soundtracks. This woman's very well known in the harp world. So it was really simply just kismet.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but was she last year? I think it was you hosted an episode of the Irish and Celtic Music podcast.
Yes,
and was Sylvia Woods one of the artists on that?
Yes. So I wanted to make sure that I included one of her tracks in honor of her, of course, and of course I'm still in touch with her, and we chat from time to time and have a good laugh over things. It's wonderful.
Awesome. And that would be episode number 413 for anyone who wants to find out more about that. You can find a link in the show notes. Now, so you started playing the harp, and you started recording albums, and it seems like you've done really well for yourself in that time too. I see your name associated with a lot of things. Can you tell me some of the projects that you've worked on playing the harp?
Well, I've been invited to perform on a number of recordings. I can't even remember all of them, to be honest with you, because people often will say, we need harp. Can you play on this track or that track? And I'm honored. And if it all works and the music works for me and I'm happy to do so. I love playing with other musicians. That's how, I believe that that's how we grow as musicians. If we get to perform with others and we're not just playing or performing in our own little bubble, we learn so much. And I'm always learning. People ask me, how long did it take you to learn to play the harp? I really just still feel like I'm still learning because there's always something new to learn. Yeah. So one of those albums where I was asked to perform on a track was an album that Ricky Kej and Voter Kellerman were recording. And Ricky Kej is out of India, and he has arranged and created many Bollywood soundtracks. So in case you're not familiar, wow. Bollywood is the big major movie musical industry in India. So he had recorded many of those. And Voter Kellerman is a fantastic flutist out of South Africa, and they were teaming up on an album, a New Age album. And I had been in touch with Ricky through social media, and he contacted me really quite at the last minute and said, could you record on one of our tracks for our upcoming album? And I listened to the track that he sent, and he said, we need this in 2 weeks really quickly, or something like that. It was a very fast turnaround, and it just worked that I was able to get into the studio and record and did a lot of improvisation over it. And like many of the other recordings that I've sat in on, I kind of go, okay, can't wait to hear what it sounds like and move on. And then I hear what it sounds like, and it's this beautiful, lush recording, just a gorgeous recording. The record is Winds of Samsara, and the track that I performed on is called Eyes of Wonder. So this album, it gets nominated for a Grammy Award. And it was like one of the most easiest, or not really easiest, one of the most fluid recording sessions that I've sat in on. It was just completely easeful. So I was thrilled, went to the Grammys with the recording engineer, with my recording engineer, and we're just sitting there in the audience and got to enjoy the whole Grammy experience, and the album won.
Oh, wow.
This was back in 2016.
Oh, fantastic.
So fantastic. That experience was just phenomenal. And it's not, the experience isn't like a head trip. The experience is, oh my God, I am a member of this wonderful tribe of musicians and people who support musicians and support music and everybody in the whole music industry field. What I was really struck by was that people who came up and accepted their awards, they weren't politicizing things or being, on a head trip and sounding narcissistic or anything like that. They were all, most of them, the first things that came out of their mouth was, oh my God, I can't believe I got this. I can't believe you guys voted for me. And the amount of thanks and sheer gratitude was really beautiful. And I thought, I am so grateful to be a member of this kind of community. So I just, I'm very happy to record on people's albums. I love being in the recording studio. I just love playing.
Fantastic. So you have a new album out now, and it's called A Winter's Dance. Why don't we get a listen to it? Do you have a track that you'd like to kick us off with to share some of your harp music?
Yes. So this track is A Winter's Eve Aire. It is actually, the actual title of it is Christmas Eve Aire. But David Blonski, the flutist whom I'm performing with on this track and on this album, we just decided that because we're putting our own spin on these traditional pieces, we're not going to call them what everybody knows them as, because it's our spin on them. So this is a traditional Irish air, and it's just David and I playing a duet, and he's just backing me up. And so you really get to hear the Celtic harp. It's the closest thing to a solo, a Celtic harp solo on my A Winter's Dance CD. So I hope you enjoy it.
That was absolutely wonderful. And thank you so much for sharing it. One of the things I noticed in this track, and it seems like it's pervasive throughout the album, is that it's very beautiful. It is light and airy, and it has this beautiful energy is that something that you feel goes throughout the album for you? How's that? What was your idea behind the album?
The original idea behind this album was to fulfill requests of my fans and people who like listening to my music, because year after year, they would say, "You don't have a holiday album. We really want a Christmas album." And I was resistant to that because I didn't want to put out an album that really would just be sold for a month and a half of the year, and that would be it. So I decided also that I wanted to put something together that was more seasonal, that could last throughout the season. Maybe people would start playing it in October, and maybe I know they're still playing it right now. I look at my stats and people are still playing these tracks. So I'm happy that it has more of a longer shelf life that way. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to put it out, is to kind of answer that, to fulfill that wish of my fans to have music that they could play of mine that's for the holidays. But also, I really wanted to play a duet album. My other albums I've put out have either been solo or they've been complete ensembles. And I've been down the ensemble road, and it's wonderful, but it takes a really long time to put out an ensemble album. So, what I decided to do is find somebody to work with on a duet album. Well, the very first album that I performed on, I think it's back like 1993 or something, was Through the Mist. This album I recorded with Blonski, flutist David Blonski. And he had been asking me, "Hey, Anne, we should get together and do another album. It's been a really long time." And we have a sort of a chemistry when we play. We hear each other and kind of jam off of each other as we're playing. So when we're performing, what you hear on that album will never be performed exactly like that again. When we get together to perform, we start hearing what we're doing. We just kind of get into it, or one of these songs may seem shorter on the album, but maybe in a live concert, we're just really into it and we just take it off somewhere else. And so he seemed perfect. It's sort of like going full circle, because this is somebody who I've performed a duet album before with, and also that he was really interested in this idea of playing holiday music that's not like Jingle Bells. So that's how this album came to be. And originally we thought it wouldn't take that long to put this together, because we do have that kind of chemistry. But then the pandemic happened. So need I say more? So it took a few years to come out. And maybe that's really good, because we were really able to listen and hone in on our sound and what we were doing. And I think we're both really pleased and really proud of this album, because now he too has an album in his vast repertoire of albums that he has put out himself that has that wintertime holiday feel without being in your face Christmas carols.
I love that. I was thinking as you were describing that, I was like, yeah, this actually does work any time of the year, doesn't it?
Yeah. You're welcome to. In fact, one of the tracks on here, Dark Forest, we thought people might like playing that in October, maybe not holiday season, but maybe because it has sort of a haunting sound to it.
Awesome. Well, let's play another track from the album. What do you have to share with us next?
So this next tune is the Cutty Wren. And the Cutty Wren, that's the actual title of it. You could look it up all over the place and find it. It's also known as the Carmarthen Wren song, and it's from the 1400s. So it's very ancient music. I really love this tune because, yes, it sounds very happy, but it features David playing what I call birdie flute. It sounds like it honestly sounds like there's birds flying around in the studio when he was playing this. So it conjures up that beautiful vision in my mind.
All right, here's the Cutty Wren. So you mentioned that the song, the Cutty Wren, was from like the 1400s. I noticed that there was a couple of tracks that were similarly fairly old, going into the medieval period even. Tell me a little bit about that. Is that something that you play a lot?
My first love, when I started learning to play the Celtic harp, my first fascination of a particular genre of music was early music and Renaissance music. I performed at the LA Renaissance Fair, and so that it was very useful because that was my first live performance experience, sitting on a hay bale with my hat out in front of me and finding out what it was to perform in front of people. And I learned that there was no reason to be nervous because particularly at the Renaissance Fair, it's very loud and noisy to begin with. Right. But everybody wanted to hear Greensleeves. They didn't want to hear anything else but Greensleeves because that's what everybody knows. So they'd walk up to me and they'd put money in my hat and then say, play Greensleeves. And they do this all day long, even though I had a lot of other music I could play. And a friend of mine said, why don't you just put a sign up next to you that says Greensleeves played at 2, 4, and 5:30? And I said, well, if I did that, I wouldn't have gas money to get home. So that was my first love of music. And so I've always kind of hearkened back to that music, even when I'm playing, just that kind of sound. The early music involves very sparse open chords in comparison to modern music. And I like that sparseness because with the harp, those strings get to ring more. You're not immediately putting your fingers back on strings as you play. You're letting that ring. So I've always enjoyed that sound, been connected with that sound. Besides, I love the Renaissance Fair, and that's the sound of Renaissance Fair. So, of course, I play plenty of Celtic music too, or Carolyn music particularly, because that was, Renaissance period music as well. Yeah. But this earlier music has that sound. And we decided to use some of this music. David Blonski and I wanted to use music that was more obscure. Holiday music, winter music, but music that people may not really know. This may be their first introduction to these melodies. So that's also why we wanted to go way back in time to find music to reintroduce people to this music and maybe put a little bit of a more modern spin on it. This album is decidedly new age sounding. So it's a different spin on it. It's not the ancient way they may have played these, but it's still, the melodies have still lasted over all of these centuries.
Anne, can you share with me maybe a favorite holiday memory before we head into the final track?
Certainly. I live in Tahoe, South Lake Tahoe, and this is an alpine lake in the Sierra Nevada range that borders California, Nevada. This town is about 6,200 foot elevation, so we always get snow. But I grew up in Southern California. I'm a valley girl. And we didn't have snow down there. Never saw it when I lived in Los Angeles, except for when I was a Girl Scout and joined the Girl Scouts so that I could go and see what snow was because they had a snow trip up into the local mountains. But other than that, I had never seen it. And when I went on my honeymoon many years later, after living in Los Angeles for a long time, we took a trip around California and we camped. And one of the places we went to is in Northern California, and it is at Lassen National Park. And we woke up one morning and it was snowing. This is in July. And my husband looked out the window and he goes, "You're not going to believe it, but it's snowing." And I said, "What?" And looked out there, and sure enough, the ping pong table we had played on the day before was covered in about 3 inches of snow. And he said, "I don't think we're going horseback riding today." And we stayed inside and, at the fireplace. And I was jumping for joy because I had never seen snow fall from the sky. Now, I had seen it on the ground driving some places, but never seen it fall from the sky. And it was such a treat. So for me, even though we're talking about the holiday season at the end of the year, for me, that was like Christmas in July, seeing it snow. And so that's probably what brought me up to Tahoe and enjoying living in this place that it always snows here in Tahoe. In fact, they have a saying that it snows somewhere in the Sierra Nevadas and in Tahoe at least once a month, somewhere up here, because we're at such a high elevation.
All right. Thank you, Anne, so much for joining me for Celtic Christmas Music. If you want to find out more about Anne Roos and David Blonski and their album A Winter's Dance, you can head on over to harpistandroos.com. Again, there's a link in the show notes to find out more. We're going to finish up with one final song. Oh, and I should point out, if you are at all interested in wedding music, Anne Roos wrote the guide to it. I have a book here called Musician's Guide to Brides.
That's right. There's also another book called The Bride's Guide to Musicians that I wrote.
Really? I did not know about that one. Fantastic. So make sure you go check that out as well. Anne has at least one album of wedding music that you can get through her website as well. So thank you, Anne, so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. This is wonderful, Mark.
You're very welcome. This is A Worthy Gentleman from A Winter's Dance by Anne Roos and David Blonski. Celtic Christmas music was produced by Mark Gunn. The show is edited by Mitchell Peterson with graphics by Miranda Nelson Designs. The show is supported by Christmas music lovers just like yourself over on Patreon. Join others to spread Christmas cheer. You can sign up for as little as $1 per episode. That's nothing in the holiday season, how much money is spent. So more is always better, but $1, just make a pledge. Visit our website, subscribe to the podcast. You'll find links to all the artists played in this episode. Please tell one friend about this podcast. Word of mouth is the absolute best way to support any creative endeavor. Promote Celtic culture through Christmas music at CelticChristmasPodcast.com. Nollaig.